Welcome to Permission to Shine, the space where high-achieving women like you come to peel back the layers, overcome what's been holding you back, and rise into your most authentic, powerful self. I'm your host, Sherisse Bisram, inner power activation leader and intuitive healer, and a woman who knows what it means to look like she's thriving on the outside, also while feeling disconnected on the inside. This podcast is here to remind you, you didn't come here to just perform, you came here to lead with your soul. Your obstacles, they're invitations to expand. And your power, it was never outside of you. It's been waiting within you all along. Each week we'll dive into honest conversations, healing insight and soul-led strategies to help you stop self-sabotaging, reclaim your light and lead your life, your business and your relationships from deep-rooted truth. So if you're ready to rise with grace, softness and fire, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, I'm so excited to welcome an incredible guest onto the show. Now, I don't have very many men that I invite on and into this space because, as you know, it is predominantly for women, and I want you all to feel really safe and seen in these spaces. And so I had a really lovely conversation with Trevor a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, right, I feel like he is the guy to talk to you about his topics in particular, and his business is called The Art of Healing. You might have seen him on social media or spaces like that, but I'm really excited to invite Trevor Hansen into the show today to just share his wisdom, knowledge and expertise with you. So thank you, Trevor, for being here today.
Appreciate you letting me be here, especially because it's usually a girls only club. It's nice to get the invite. I'll tread lightly and not
No, I want you
not
to be
not
100%.
yeah. Well, great.
Amazing. So do you want to kind of tell the listeners a bit more about what you do in your own words?
Yeah, so in the most simple form, if you are familiar with the word anxious attachment and secure attachment, I help people go from anxiously attached to secure. And some people are going to be like, I don't know what that is, or they might be like, I don't know what the benefit is. And so there's all sorts of things there, but that's the most simple version of what I do. And I guess I'll add this little caveat. I help people to do it pretty quickly because I think there's some stumbling blocks in the way that many are approaching their healing and their work that are keeping them stuck for years. And so we kind of take a little bit of a different approach that helps people make progress real fast. So I help people go from anxiously attached to secure quickly.
Amazing. I love that. And it's so on topic at the moment as well, because I feel like, especially in this dating pool for, I would say, high caliber women. And I mean, you can obviously give me your expertise on that. I know you're in the US and it might be slightly different, but in the UK, we're finding that these online dating sites, for example, are filled with men that are avoidant. Right. So then
Mm,
naturally, I feel like the anxious attachment type of woman, well, she doesn't even know she's anxiously attached until she meets that avoidant person and they're doing this chase. And then it feels like it doesn't really get anywhere. And so that movement, I believe, for women to come out of that anxious attachment into secure means that they are no longer going to go for that avoidant type of guy and actually have better relationships. And I'm pretty sure you've got so many stories about how that looks as well, which I'm really excited to dive
yeah.
into. But first of all, I really want to know why this is important to you, really.
Yeah. Well, it's important to me because I definitely was in the anxious attachment. Yeah, that's my primary or predominant attachment style. And here's the thing, we can all have kind of a mix where it's like I'm kind of secure here, I'm kind of anxious there. I was very secure in like work and professional settings and all of that. I worked at Tesla for a while and I had to give this presentation where I gathered data that was important in making a decision around like hiring and all this stuff. And I actually had to like present it to Elon Musk. And to some people, that'd be terrifying. I was just excited, right? And yet, at the same exact season of my life, I felt terribly insecure when it came to like relationships with dating, even friendships, it kind of bleeded over there. And that insecurity or those fears around like not being enough or others not being interested in me or being alone, all those, I think it really sabotaged my ability to succeed in dating and in friendships. And so, through my own work, have changed that pattern, and changing that pattern led to truly the best things I have in my life. Meaning, I found my wife. I've got the beautiful 2-year old son. I've got, just this rich life of relationships that I know wasn't possible without doing that work and that healing to become a more secure and confident person. So now I just love helping people to do it because it's just so fun. And it's like I get to hang out with like I don't know. I sometimes I romanticize like if I could travel in time and go give my past self some advice and give him some like encouragement, like find him while he's working at Tesla and give him some love, like what I might say. And in a way, I kind of get to do that like every day because I just work with the people who are maybe in that stage of life, and it's just it's just very fun, very rewarding for me.
I love that so much. And first of all, I want to say thank you for sharing that story because I think that we hear about our attachment styles predominantly from women, right? Or obviously experts in this
Mm,
field. But I feel like for you, it sounded like you were really in like a peak of your career. I mean, actually speaking to Elon Musk, I'm sure a lot of people here are like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And it's very masculine, right? Your whole job role,
mm,
everything was very, sounds quite dominant and masculine. You're really in that field. But when it came to connection, that's the part
hmm.
that obviously was where your insecurity was shown up. But we never hear that. I can't even tell you the last time I heard a successful man talk about that part. But I can imagine
Yeah.
that a lot of men are going through this process. And I'd love for you to kind
Oh
of
yeah.
touch on, your male clients that you have, just to give us hope as women as well, just to know. But as we go on, we'll get to that point. But I just think
Yeah.
it's really important that we're talking about this as well from a friendship perspective, because I think that obviously we're talking about romance all of the time, but a lot of the women that I work with, they are, caught in this sort of feminist energy slash obviously the patriarchal thing where women are seeing each other as competition, and there's a real divide, I think, in terms of energy of if your team, girls all about the women celebrating women, but then the other side of that is that I want to be successful in my career. If it means not having friends, if it means not meeting anyone, then I'll do that too. So I'm really interested to see the type of people that I'm sure you've got loads of different types of people that come to you. But let's say
Yeah.
from that high achieving perspective of women, I'd really love to
Yeah.
know kind of what the common things are and how you shift them as well.
Yeah. So what I found is that, and this is honestly shared between both men and women in a lot of ways, a lot of high achievers are, and it's not to undermine any positive attribute that is in a high achiever, right? We don't want to like say your high achievement is due to some sort of dysfunction that drives you there. But in part, we often find that's true. I remember hearing a story. I think it was like Alex Hermosi or one of those guys talking about how he was in a room, like a big old conference room type of all these very successful people, and they had to be hitting certain like revenue markers in order to even be there. And so you knew everybody in there was very, very high caliber. And he was like, "How many of you here experienced?" Basically asking the question of like hardship or some situation in your life that built in you like a fear or an insecurity that you're not good enough, and you think your business is succeeding because you've been trying to prove that you have worth and that you have value through your monetary gains or your success or your status or whatever else. And it's a pretty vulnerable question, but they had gotten into the point of the conference where they had broken down a lot of barriers. And so these guys and women were all willing to raise their hands at that point, like, yeah. And it was almost the whole room. It was like everybody. And I know that for me, it's the same. Like, I've been very successful. We have probably one of the most successful coaching programs on the planet for helping people become secure. Built this big old following and, doing all these things that somebody on the outside be like, wow, that's very successful. And I do feel blessed to have that success. But I do know that one of the drivers has been this fear of like not being good enough, this desire to prove that I am, and all of that. I think the drivers have shifted as I've become secure, but I will say it's not an uncommon thing for this highly successful person to, underneath the surface, actually have a lot of fears and anxieties and worries around being not good enough and so on. And it can feel like a mismatch. It can feel incongruent. I remember even when I was dating, men who are anxiously attached will experience a lot more outright rejection and ghosting, and women will experience a lot more dysfunction and then withdrawal or avoidance from their partners. They'll initially get the commitment more often just because men are more likely to engage on the initial commitment and say yes and like move forward. And if there's a bunch of reasons for that, but men are also rejected at a higher rate. A, because they're probably putting themselves out there a little bit more due to cultural norms. And B, like even just from a biological standpoint, women are kind of programmed to be much more picky. Like, for example, and it's not all about sex, but if we go down to the biology of it, sex is involved. The risk of sex is much greater for women. And so biology just says, no, like, I'm not letting any and every guy into my inner circle. So how it plays out is that men, when they're anxious, they will maybe pursue more heavily. They aren't confident. They throw on, a lot of like attention, and they sacrifice themselves maybe early in relationships. And to a woman, that feels like a lack of safety. You don't feel safe. You can sense the fear in that man. And again, at even just a core biological level, I think one of the most attractive traits in a guy, for women, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here. I don't mean to tell women their business, but what I've seen is that they prioritize safety. And so a man will experience a lot of like rejection, and I think it comes down to this underlying feeling of she doesn't feel terribly safe. But then women, they experience it different. They will oftentimes get into the relationship initially, but their fears of abandonment, rejection, not being good enough can turn into this kind of insidious pattern where they don't realize it's happening, but if their male partner isn't giving them the validation, the reassurance, the kind of maybe more constant and consistent soothing of their anxiety, it's kind of like they outsource the soothing of their anxiety to their partner. And if their partner can't do it, then they show up with like criticism, and complaining at their guy, right? And this is not to, I tread lightly here because I don't want to paint a stereotype that like women are naggy and all this other stuff. But I think that's where some of the complaints might come from. This is like, she's always telling me that I'm not good enough and that I'm not hitting the mark. And that usually leads to conflict cycles and an eroding of the relationship. And so women will make it further. Anxious women will make it further into relationship. Anxious men will make it, date one, date two, and then it's usually over for him. So it just plays out in different ways. And I know I'm answering way more than the question that you asked. I guess I get on a roll thinking about it all.
No, I love it. I feel like that was answering questions that I would have had. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Mm.
And so much of that relates to my story and also to the work I do with my clients as well, which is really interesting because that trauma piece that you spoke about at the beginning, oh my gosh, like that is the key, I think, to everything. The reason that we are the way we are is obviously because of our like lived experiences and obviously learned behavior as well. And I think so many people don't realize that what they are copy and pasting into their romantic relationships comes from the experiences they had in childhood. And I think for me, that's my golden thread to all of this. And actually, really
Yeah,
quite vulnerably, the reason why I never felt safe really in relationships was because I didn't realize that my childhood trauma patterns were playing out. And so it's really taken me a good few years of, taking down that masculine armor to allow someone in, but then
yeah,
equally meeting those people and me still being quite masculine and not allowing them to protect me sometimes, but then equally being naturally intuitive and all of the things, I can feel when someone doesn't make me safe quite quite
right,
instantly, really. So everything you said
right,
there was very on the mark of what I've experienced personally, but also with the
right.
clients that I've had. Now, a lot of the clients that come to me aren't necessarily single, they're in relationships and all of the things. And actually, sometimes their relationship mark is their friendships. But I know that this pattern obviously crosses over, and I do have a lot of single ladies that do listen to this. So I think that this is going to be that the answer to the question they didn't realize they had, which I think is great in this space. But as we're kind
Mhm.
of moving forward and we're talking about the other now, as in like other people and clients and things like that, I'd love to know from your experience. You spoke about your journey and how you got to this point where you are now secure. What would you say the moment was that you really gave yourself the permission to shine, to be all of you, to be this secure person? Might be a few moments, but what was that for you?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that lead up to it's interesting because I've never thought about it. Was there a moment that was most pivotal? And I will say there, like kind of you're alluding to, there's probably a handful of moments. Um, but overall, my journey was I had been doing a lot of my own personal work. I didn't have the guidance that I provide people now, and so it took me a lot longer, which is a bummer for me, but it's great for the people that I get to work with now, right? And so I was I was trying everything, like books, podcasts. I was even doing some therapy, but I didn't feel like there was any like structure to it. We was just kind of like piecing random stuff together. Um, I and so I started to try to kind of do my best to create my own structure, my own way of getting in repetition around the kinds of activities that helped me to feel secure. And that was the marker for me. I would just pay attention. I was like, okay, if I do this journaling thing, does it even help me? Does it actually bring feelings of confidence and safety and self-trust? And if it didn't, then I'm like, next, like that's not helpful. I don't care if somebody told me to do it. I don't care if my therapist told me to do it or if I listened to it on a podcast. If I didn't have an emotional experience with the activity, then it wasn't worth repeating over and over and over again. And it's not to say that every time, you do your meditation or you do your journaling or do whatever thing you've put together, that it's going to be like earth shattering and change your heart always. But it needs to have some sort of consistency where, yeah, I go there and I do find solace. I do find safety because, and this is getting into some theory and I'm building up to, I guess, a moment, but it's important for the context. The An insecure attachment, whether it's avoidant or anxious, it's not secure. So we'll call it an insecure attachment. Those feelings, that programming was built through lived experiences where you had emotional experiences. So you have maybe like a highly critical mom. The emotional experience is that I never feel like I'm good enough. Maybe for me, I was smaller growing up, and so I felt left out in physical activity with other boys. So I quite literally feel like physically and emotionally small, right? It's an emotional experience that programs it. And so my theory was I need emotional experiences that reprogram it, but in the positive. I need to feel confidence. I need to feel safe. I need to feel, self-trust, all the stuff that you would imagine a secure person walks around with. I'm like, I need to get that somehow. And that's what I focus on now, giving others. So I was doing a lot of that and doing my work and building on whatever I knew how to do without a ton of real clarity and structure, but trying to create my own. And then there was a time where I broke my eye socket in a skiing accident. I was doing this trick and I came down off of it and I landed in a way that my knee hit me in the face and it broke my nose. I have a little bit of a crooked nose now because of it. And it broke my eye socket and it was just a horrendous accident. And I had to have some emergency surgery. And after the surgery, my eyelid was like sewn shut because I wasn't allowed to open it up. And the other eye was just so weepy, just my normal, the good eye. It was just so weepy that I could hardly see anything. And so I sat at my parents' house because I couldn't do anything. I was blind essentially for a few days. I sat at my parents' house and I pretty much just sat with eyes closed for multiple days. And you can't do a whole lot when you got your eyes closed. And I remember in that time spending a lot of time in prayer. And for me, a higher power is an important part of my healing journey. And I had been working on this ability to trust in a higher power more than trust in myself, and believe that even bad things can be not a setback, but a set up for good that is going to come. And in that time, I had plenty of time to just sit and pray and listen and kind of surrender to the idea that, like, I'm going to be okay. And the whole theory was that if I could learn to trust in this way, then I wouldn't be afraid if I was going on a date. Like, who cares if I'm rejected or if it works out or if they don't text me back? Like, all of that becomes unimportant if it's all meant for my good. And through that experience, I mean, I was very humbled as well. Um, I remember sitting in like my board shorts, like swim trunks, in the shower as like my mom showered me, and I'm like a grown adult man, and so I'm just humbled. I'm listening. I'm surrendering. I'm believing that good things will come of this no matter what. And it's true, good things did come of it. I'm telling you a story, I'm telling your audience a story that's hopeful. And quite literally, after that experience, I had a deep sense of that trust that I was looking for, that trust and belief that I could kind of surrender it to something bigger than my control. And through that, shortly after, I actually met my wife. And when I met her, I was deeply secure, partly because of that experience. And I'm not saying you need to shatter your eye socket in order to become secure. That's probably not the best recipe. But for me, what was the recipe was the emotional experience of connecting, not with just a principle and an idea, but I really felt it through the experience. And so that is probably one of the most pivotal moments that helped transform my heart from anxious and insecure to secure.
I love that story so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's so important that we, really hone in on that, trusting something else. Like I always talk about spirituality. I feel like it's a real key component for me as well, because I guess I didn't shatter my eye socket, but my childhood experience was really difficult. And at the time, I just remember telling myself that this will all make sense one day. Everything that I'm going
Mm.
through will make sense one day. I'm supposed to do this, and it's supposed to be hard now because it will make sense. And I've just always known that. And even before I connected with the idea of the universe and energy, I was praying to a God. No, I didn't know who, but I was just knowing that something
Yeah,
would get better, right? And
yeah.
I think that that in itself is just one of the key components, right? Having trust is so important, and especially when we're talking about building that internal safety. And I think you also clicked on something so important there about the self-awareness. And I mean, it's very evident to see that you are radically self-aware, which is, the most important thing. And this is something that I um speak about a lot, with clients and on the show, because I just feel like when you are self-aware, you can pretty much handle and do anything, because when you know your patterns and your behaviors, you get to choose how you move forward from the situation. And I think a lot of people that perhaps are anxious or avoidant are actually blissfully unaware a lot of the time of the fact that they have a say in how they move through this situation. And it's really
Yeah.
interesting that you talk about the safety and the self-trust. And for me, I have this like little formula that I talk about, which is self-acceptance plus self-respect equals self-love. And I do say that, that
Mm.
self-acceptance comes from the self-trust. So I think that that
Yeah.
really just harmonizes in a really beautiful way to what you're saying there. And it's just important in every area of your life, because this thing that we're talking about, these steps, these little things that we can start to do to support ourselves in just knowing what we like and what we need, I think is just the fundamental thing for yourself as a human, let alone if you're going to then add another human into the mix. I just think it's so important. So I really wanted to highlight that. And I guess that really takes us into you kind of sharing a bit more about your structure, tempo, as we briefly
Mm.
spoke about before. And I'd love for you to kind of explain to the audience what that looks like, because it's very clear. And before we do that, actually, I just want to touch on the fact that you spoke about your kind of messy healing journey. And I just want to caveat the fact that mine was the same. So when I came out of like the pandemic hit, I couldn't be a performer anymore. I couldn't run from my trauma that I'd been blissfully unaware of as well, right? The proving, the forcing. And my journey was the same on like how to find my way through it. And I think for anyone that's listening that is in that messy part, it's all part of the journey. But luckily,
Yeah.
there are people like you that have a formula to support people through that doesn't feel messy. And equally
Mm.
for myself, you know, having just someone to guide you through this process takes away the craziness of the chaos and all of the things, which is equally something we honor, but it doesn't have to be that way. So yeah, I'd love for
Right.
you to share.
Yeah, well, definitely. So what we're talking about here, because you're starting to talk about how important this awareness is. And before we do this, I will say one little caveat is that awareness is a great place to start. And what I'm going to give you in a minute here is a beautiful formula for building an awareness in a way that can help you to really make a transformation in your life. And this is, um, I always say this on podcasts if I'm going to share it. I say this is one of the tools that when people come out of our program, it's a 4 month program, Becoming Secure. This is one of the very first things I teach them. One of the very, very first. And yet, when those who choose to share testimonials at the end, they almost always mention this formula or framework that I'm about to give you as one of the most helpful things. And it's because it acts as kind of the foundation for a lot of the other work that we do. And so this is the moment where a podcast can either be something cute that you just listen to in your car as you're driving, or it can be life changing. Life changing means you say, okay, hold on, I'm going to pause. I'm going to bookmark this. I'm going to come back and write it down because what I'm going to give you is worth doing that. And I know that might sound a little bit, I don't know, egotistical. I've got the best thing in the world for you. But like truly, I want to make sure that you don't give up this gift if you're listening to this. But the caveat around awareness is awareness can only get you so far. A lot of people are very aware of their patterns. Some of the most dysfunctional and unhealthy people that I've known in my life are therapists. They have all the awareness in the world. And I think some of them, and this is a totally different topic for another day, some of them are chasing healing through their own practice and have not yet found it, but they have all the awareness. And so emotional experiences that transform the heart are the things that actually create the healing. So, kind of like the surrendering, you know, all of the experiences that I was talking about. But this is a beautiful place to start and can get you closer to those emotional experiences. I call it the tempo cycle. And I got to give credit. I didn't create the acronym. I originally came across the acronym. It was a little bit of a different application. These trainers that train in emotionally focused therapy in Arkansas gave me this one. But the tempo cycle is a way of tracking what we call the anxious attachment cycle. The anxious attachment cycle is that pattern that you get sucked into when you get triggered by a situation. Maybe you don't get a text back. Maybe your partner's not, you know, giving you as much attention as you like. Maybe you notice your partner, you think that they're maybe looking at, you know, maybe another girl or something. You're not quite sure, but it kind of feels like they're checking somebody out in public. Like whatever the situation is, you get triggered. This is a cycle that helps you map out the spiral and stop it before you create negative outcomes in your relationship. So I want you to help me build it as we go. If you were to think of maybe your clients or your audience, and let's say anxiously attached female, we'll go back to the anxious attached, high achieving female, she's single. What's one of the triggers that she might encounter? And maybe you're going to mention your own trigger, I don't know, but you talk about what's a situation that you feel like would send her into maybe a bit of a spiral.
So I feel like just to say, I feel like I am more secure and I probably am secure now. So I'm not going to give my own personal example. I don't
No, no,
really
meaning it, and it could be a reference to a past trigger
yeah,
or one that you might see in your clients. Either one is totally
definitely.
good.
No, I just thought that was funny to mention that, yeah, I'm not there anymore, thankfully. But
Yes.
I know for a lot of women, they don't have a lot of time. So if they don't get the response when they want it, basically, that's
Hmm.
something that triggers them a lot because they're like, I'm doing a million things. Why haven't I heard back? That type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So they're not getting the text back. And That's the T or the trigger. So if you're mapping this out, you would write that down as your trigger. You're just writing that down, you're kind of noting it. T trigger is I'm not getting that text back. Then the E is the emotions that follow. And this is just emotional awareness at this point. Maybe I feel worried. Maybe I start to feel frustrated. Uh, Maybe I start to feel anxious. It's kind of the same thing as worried, but all of that. Or maybe you start to feel kind of like embarrassed, like, oh man, like they're not texting me back. I kind of feel silly because they're not giving me that attention. The M, the meaning is the meaning that you're making in that situation. They're not texting me back. Therefore, you're kind of assigning all these negative beliefs and truths. What do you think would be plugged into the meaning in that situation? What could somebody be thinking in their mind, do you think?
Oh, maybe they're texting multiple women, they've got other things that they're doing, they don't value my time as much as they should. Um,
Mm,
Maybe I'm too good for them. That's another one that comes up, especially for the high achieving woman. It's like I'm out of their league, or
mm,
I must be what's the right word? There's a word that people use, um unapproachable, that type of thing, like when someone's a
mm.
bit too, they feel like they're too good, so then they just pull back. That's something that comes up a lot. Um
Gotcha.
Maybe they're feeling like, oh, maybe I was too masculine for them, too assertive, and then I
Ah,
wasn't feminine enough, like that type of thing.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So there's all sorts of ways that a person's interpreting the situation or assigning the meaning, right? You named a few, and I'll echo back a couple. So you're sitting there thinking, oh, I was too much or not enough in one kind of way. I was too masculine, or I didn't show them this, or, they start to make these meanings about how either they're not good enough or they're making meaning about the other person. Like, oh, the other person, he's just blowing me off. He doesn't care about me, this and that. And all those things, we don't know if any of them are true. But those are the stories that you're going to tell yourself if you are anxiously attached. They're going to sound like echoes of the fear of abandonment, usually, the meaning making. He doesn't want me. I'm not good enough. This isn't going to work out because of X, Y, and Z. It's the fears of abandonment echoing into the meaning that you're making. Okay, so at this point, you're catching the meaning, you're understanding it, and the M leads to the outcome. And you already mentioned a couple of them. Maybe you just fully disengage, write the guy off, and which might be a shame because maybe he's just busy too, doing his own thing, and life is happening, and you have no idea, and it could be something good, but you write him off. Another outcome is that you just overthink, worrying about, oh, should I send this? Should I send this? You're like chat GPTing all the responses. What should I say to this guy right now? Right? Overthinking and wasting your time there, or just wasting your energy and burning yourself out. Another option is that you double text, you send something again and you just try and salvage the conversation. Whatever it is, there's usually a P of protection. So it's T, trigger, E, emotion, M, meaning. P of protection is how you protect yourself. Either shut down, double down, overthink, all those things. But then the outcome is usually also negative that reinforces a negative cycle. We're talking about self-sabotage here. So if you're overthinking, I already mentioned, you're burning yourself out. You're feeling anxious. You're feeling overwhelmed. You don't have energy to then put yourself into the relationship. And so, or you're overthinking and you're not being yourself when he eventually does text back. And it's hard to find connection because you're not actually being you. If you withdraw completely, which if you're anxiously attached, you probably won't withdraw completely. That's not your MO. But if you do, then obviously there's no outcome that's successful in that relationship because there is no relationship. And if you double down and maybe put on pressure or double text, then it can be overwhelming for the other person. They start to withdraw, and then you just reinforce the belief that, oh, see, I'm not good enough. I'm too much, which creates another trigger. You can see how it all loops back. So if I were to map this out, I would actually do it in a circle. The O of the outcome becomes the new T of the trigger. He shuts down, he withdraws, he's not showing up. And if you're unaware of the cycle, you're going to blame him. See, he's an avoidant. It's like, wait, hold on. Like you were coming at him either angry because he didn't text back, you were doubling down and like sending too many texts and it was kind of overwhelming and not very connecting. You were showing up as your inauthentic self, and he had a hard time connecting with you. And so he kind of starts to withdraw from the relationship. And you're sitting there chalking it up as, oh, he's just an avoidant. And then you stay in this loop, ignorant to the fact that you might be creating some of what you're labeling as avoidance.
I'm laughing because that's happened on so many occasions with either friends telling me this same cycle, or even thinking back to a time where there was a version of that for myself. And I think I can speak for myself when I say that one of the big things I found with dating before was my expectation of someone else. I think that was a really difficult thing, is that I was almost, that saying, treat people how you treat yourself. It was like expecting that in return. And that's not fair, right? We're projecting again what we want and expect from someone else onto them, not even getting to know them first. And I think that also
Right.
is a massive part, because at this beginning stage that we're talking about, when you're getting to know someone, you don't even know them yet, right? You're creating this whole
Yeah.
monologue around it. So I was just laughing when you were saying some of those things, because I mean, some of my clients and then also memories of myself. It's a really funny space to be in, but I'm laughing because it's so human and normal. And I just want to make that very clear to anyone that's in that cycle, feeling that, like, and maybe starting to shame themselves, to just, have a bit of humility here and say, we all do it. We've all done it. We've all been there. But I'd love to
Mm.
know kind of what you would say is perhaps the first step of getting out of that cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and as we say that, I also want to throw in a tiny little caveat to something I was just saying, is that am I telling your listener that, oh, you're not actually dating avoidant men, that it's just on you and it's all your fault and that doesn't exist? Definitely not. But here's the thing, if there's black and white of this all is you're only dating avoidant men and it's all their problem. And the other side of it is, no, it's always you and you're always messing up this cycle and that's why you're finding them. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. And the truth is, I might encounter avoided men, especially if I'm anxious, because there's a natural push and pull that actually brings us together. Unfortunately, it's kind of nasty little insidious cycle. But then there's also the fact that, yeah, you might kind of be influencing avoidant type behavior in the other person through your anxious behavior. And that's actually so hopeful. I don't want somebody to listen to that and shame themselves. If you're anxious, you probably have a tendency to shame yourself. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm the one creating this. I'm the worst and blah, blah, blah. It's all on me. It's like, no, 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 no. That's so hopeful, because that doesn't mean that every guy on the planet is just some unfeeling robot, anxious guy. It's like you maybe are kind of influencing that. Great, good news. You can change the cycle and then change the outcome of those relationships, right? Maybe some anxious or avoidant part of him that lays dormant, you're not going to be activating it through your behavior. That's so great. That's so hopeful in my mind. So I wanted to first address that and then talk about, okay, if we want to get there though, we want to learn how to break the cycle, which is your question. So um, I think first of all, breaking the cycle looks like mapping it, knowing it, understanding it, being very aware that it's there, right? So I would do two things. One, sit down and just write it down. Actually write this down, like a journaling activity. Write it all down and then reflect on what the emotions are that come up as you do so. Because the emotions will probably be things like maybe some clarity or some hope or a sense of confidence that you can break it. That's usually what happens. And guess what? That emotional experience itself is going to help you reprogram your anxious attachment. Anytime you find yourself feeling a emotion that sounds like it's a secure one, hope, confidence, trust, self-compassion, love. If you find yourself feeling those, I want you to then heighten the feeling. Make it bigger is essentially what I'm saying. Making it bigger might look like, after journaling it out, sharing with somebody who you love. Like, look at this. And as you do, you're going to feel more empowered. You're going to feel even better. Maybe it looks like meditating and envisioning yourself breaking the cycle. And you feel even more of that hopefulness, right? If you encounter something good, double down on it. Because every time you do, you're teaching your emotional brain, which is where your anxious attachment lives, that you're safe, that you can do it, that you can believe in yourself, and that it's all going to be okay, right? If it's just a logical exercise, it's probably not going to change your life. It'll change your mind and give you ideas, but it won't change your life because it won't change your heart. We want a heart change, not a head change.
Such good advice there, and really, I'm laughing and smiling at the same time because this is the things that I talk about all of the time, and I love when a guest comes on and just reiterates the importance of why we do this work. It's not we're not just saying get a pen and paper and write things for the sake of it. It's like really connecting with yourself in that moment, and I think for so many people that maybe don't feel safe to have this conversation with someone else, you holding a pen and writing that for yourself is the biggest permission slip in the world, right? You can just offlay everything. And then I sometimes say, depending on what the topic is, I mean, in this situation, I would say read it back for yourself. But sometimes when it's letting go of something, you don't even have to read it back. You can just rip it up and burn it or whatever. But I love how you're talking about as well, taking the next stage, which is for me what I would call the embodiment piece. It's like, okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I've made clear on. I felt like this when I read it. So now, like you said, amplify it, bring it into every cell of our body and feeling it on every level. And I think for me, that's such an important piece because as you said, the logical step is great, but it doesn't facilitate the real transformation that I think that we get from really playing it out in our lives. And the idea of sharing that with people is the most beautiful thing in the world. And I love that, having that space with my clients for them to really fully open up and celebrating their wins with them. But if you don't have someone like a mentor or a guide or a therapist to do that with, having a friend that you can say, right, I'm going to be going through this process now, I'm going to be sharing with you how I'm moving through this. um Thank you for your support, right? And just creating like a nice safe space for you and that other person to then, like we said, amplify this win. I just think it's so important. And the steps that you're talking about for me is again, like it really correlates to the work that I'm doing. And again, with my clients, it's not necessarily about relationships with others, but more so the relationship with themselves. And I always talk about like
Yeah.
understanding what's happened to you, accepting it, and then releasing the parts that we know that no longer serve us so we can rebuild. And I feel like in what you explained there is it's a similar formula, really, practically the same, just in a different outfit. And I think this is the beauty of this work, is that when it comes from this heartfelt space of understanding experience through lived, through working with other people, it really is this is the movement, this is the ripples that are going to create lasting change. And I just want to highlight that because a lot of the guests that I have on this space, we are all saying a similar thing. And I want to highlight that it's for a reason, because this is really the formula to creating transformation. And I just want to highlight that because I think that it's so important, repetition, we've both mentioned in some form of capacity. So I hope that this for you listening is like, ah, yes, I do remember I need to do that, or I should do that. And I actually give journal prompts throughout the show. So the listeners will know that they need a pen and paper. So I hope that, you are following this process. And if you are, obviously let us know what comes up and comes forward from this space. But I'd love to know kind of, obviously, you've spoken a lot about this moving through and how, what it looks like, how we can start to take the steps forward. And I'd love for you to kind of talk about now how people can kind of find you and work with you if this is feeling like something that they really need help with.
Yeah, yeah, great question. So there's a couple of options. Um, I make the dating analogy here and levels of commitment. So, well, I'll come back to that in a second. So what we do is we have this program called the Secure Self Club. And we combine a lot of elements that I feel like are missing from many of the traditional approaches, such as that structure that I was talking about. I needed a structure, I needed plan, the emotional experiences that we're talking about, and some other things, including like community involvement and all sorts of good stuff. But what we say is that we say we're going to help you go from anxious to secure in just 4 months, or you don't have to pay. And we're the only people in this industry that have any kind of guarantee. You have to be willing to show up and do the work, but if you do the work, and it doesn't work for you, then like you don't actually have to pay for that. And so what's amazing about this is that we we help people consistently do this over and over again. And the best way to learn more about that Secure Self Club, or if you're like, oh, I'm interested in going a step further, one is you could go straight to either Instagram or our website, The Art of Healing by Trevor. That's the handle for the Instagram. That's also the website, theartofhealingbytrevor.com. Um, and if you go there, then there's a couple options. One, you could just book a call with a member of our team right then and there. You could send us a DM on Instagram, like, hey, I want to book a call. I'm curious about Secure Self Club. You could also go and do a free training. There's a free seminar that I have. It's 15 minutes, and it's the building more. This is our first date with your audience. The second date, you can go do something free again. No level of commitment. Go and watch that. It's called From Anxious to Secure. It's only 15 minutes, and it will give you real clarity on if you're trying to become secure and you're stuck, what's probably missing, and how to fill in those gaps. And then at the end of the call, it does give you an opportunity to, or at the end of the video, it gives you an opportunity to book a call if you'd like. So, The Art of Healing by Trevor. That's how you can find me pretty much anywhere. And I will say this caveat, because you probably have a lot of um, people in your audience who are in the UK, more than most podcasts. Right now, if you look at the form that you go through when you book a call, it'll say you have to be in the United States, Canada, or Australia. If you're out, the only reason we say that is because sometimes our group calls, they happen at odd times for people who are in the UK. And sometimes the financial barrier is a little bit harder to make it work. We've just found for those in the UK, exchange rates aren't always the most friendly. If you're very confident about your ability to, invest in a program from a financial standpoint, and you're okay being a little bit flexible on your time of day, then go ahead and just say you're in the United States or Canada. You can lie to us and get on the call. That's totally fine. We'll figure it out from there. You just might have to weasel your way through our application because we still want to work with you. It's just that typically when those come from UK, it's harder.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think that there will be ladies listening to this thinking, I've tried everything. I just need to give it a go, And I definitely
Yep,
recommend that if you are in that space, reach out. But like Trevor said, book a call, find out what is going to work if you're the right person for that particular program, or I'm sure there's other resources that you have as well that people can kind of
totally,
have a look on the website for, and also follow you on all the
totally.
platforms and just absorb all of that stuff. Because as we know, being in the energy of it is, a transformation step in itself, which is amazing that we have
Sure.
access to this in this modern world from all around the world, which is incredible. So,
Yeah,
I'm really grateful that you've come on today and you shared your story, but also how you've supported your clients, and you've made it really easy, I think, for a lot of people to understand the process. I think I I know about anxious and avoidant tendencies just through when I was dating and like diving in myself and trying to figure it out. And I think you've made it really accessible for so many people. So thank you for that, because I mean, I'm sure you get told all the time, but it's always nice to be reminded, isn't it, that it lands really well and very clear. So thank you for that. And
mm,
just to kind of round off the episode, I always do a little soul to soul message. So it's just based on what we've been speaking about, or maybe something that someone's feeling right now, maybe another anxious attached person that maybe feels
mm,
like they don't know where to go now. Whatever your heart feels like you want to share at this moment, I'd love for you to share.
My message, because I get this question asked in different forms often, and it always seems to default back to my hope is that you feel hope. Because if you are stuck, you may believe that this is just the way you are. It's kind of like your height, you can't change it. But no, it's not. It is absolutely moldable. You can absolutely change this. You can become secure and confident and deeply trusting in yourself. And so I would encourage a heart of hopefulness coming out of today's conversation, knowing that you can do this. If you can change yourself, and therefore you can change the outcomes in your relationships.
I love that so much. And I think, when I get clients come to me for the very first call, they always say to me that they can't feel anything, or why can't they feel something? And I think that what you've just said there is that promise of knowing that you will, and it does get better, and you can connect, and it will transform. You know, you're not a tree, you're not going to be standing still forever. There is, and also
Yeah.
there is always someone out there for all of us, right? So I think that that's also another reminder. It's, you know, you will meet that person. I mean, I'm still in it, you know, I'm still in the game of being single, but I'm very much in a secure, trusting place that the universe will bring my person at the right time, and I'm open to receive. And I think that that's an important thing to share, because I think that sometimes we think that being single is, you know, a bad thing or whatever, and it's like, actually, if you're enjoying life and enjoying yourself, I think that that in itself would be the thing that creates and gravitates the right people towards you. So I just wanted to leave that there. um I work with astrology, and I feel like I know your star sign in my head, and I want you to tell me, just to confirm, because of the way
Oh,
your mindset works. It's just interesting.
I don't 100% know if this is true because I never really spent a lot of time there. Um, I think I'm an Aries,
When's your birthday?
April 7th.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. Okay, you've definitely got a Capricorn in your chart. So it'd be interesting if, I mean, you don't obviously not need to do any of this, but it's just interesting from my perspective, because you're very logical, and Capricorn is very strategic. So I feel like you're a Capricorn rising, but that's just my little caveat there on the end there. You're like,
There you go.
you're like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
sure.
of
But I just because obviously I add that in a lot of the time, so I just thought I'd share that. But thank you so much, Trevor, for sharing your
course.
morning with us, and all of your beautiful wisdom and knowledge, and all of your links will be in the show notes so people can come and find you from wherever.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please do comment as well what you feel like you've learned from the episode. It's really helpful. And if you can rate it on a 5-star review, I would be so grateful, because that just means that more women get access to these teachings within the episodes. And also, who would you like to be on the show? DM me and let me know. And please do share with a friend that you know needs to hear what's in this episode today. I would also love to invite you into my inner power portal, because that is the space where all of my meditations are, all of my activations, and I host 2 live sessions per month that do include movement and my spiritual downloads and all the beautiful things that I offer all in one space. Plus you get to ask me any questions that you have. So I'd love to see you in there. Have a great week.